My brother publicly mocked my $10,000 engagement gift, demanding I double it to $20,000 if I wanted an invite to his wedding. He didn't realize the luxury apartment he lived in wasn't a family inheritance. It was my property, and I was done subsidizing his life. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Kin and Karma. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. I stared at the heavy cream cardstock in my hand, my thumb tracing the embossed lettering of the bank's logo. $10,000. To most people, this was a life-changing amount of money. To me, it represented 6 months of deferred vacations, skipped dinners out, and overtime hours logged at my construction management firm. It was a sacrifice, a hefty slice of my savings, but it was for Ryan, my little brother, the golden boy who had finally, supposedly, decided to settle down. I was standing in the foyer of the rented banquet hall, the air thick with the cloying scent of cheap lilies and expensive perfume. My head was pounding, a dull, rhythmic throb behind my eyes that had started 3 days ago when I came down with a vicious summer flu. I shouldn't have been here. My body was screaming for bed rest, my joints ached, and I was running a low-grade fever that made the room spin slightly when I turned my head too fast. But I had rallied. I had put on a dress that felt too tight against my clammy skin, applied enough concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes, and driven 40 minutes to celebrate Ryan and Tiffany. "Caroline, you made it." The voice boomed across the room. It was Owen, our father. He was holding a glass of scotch, his face flushed with the early stages of intoxication. He lumbered over, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. The impact sent a jolt of pain down my aching back. "Barely, Dad," I managed a weak smile, clutching my clutch bag where the check resided. "I'm still fighting this bug, but I didn't want to miss the toast." "That's the spirit," Owen beamed, looking past me toward the head table where Ryan and Tiffany were holding court. "Important night. Big night for the family. Ryan's finally growing up, eh?" I followed his gaze. Ryan looked handsome in a tuxedo that I knew for a fact he hadn't paid for. Beside him sat Tiffany, looking every inch the princess she believed she was. She was young, barely 24, with a sharp, angular beauty that was currently contorted into a laugh as she whispered something in Ryan's ear. They looked like royalty, sitting atop a dais of flowers and silk. "I have a surprise for them," I said softly, patting my bag. "To help with the car they want." Owen's eyes lit up. The Range Rover. Good girl, Caroline, good girl. You know how much that image matters to Ryan's business. Ryan's business was a vague venture involving consulting and cryptocurrency that, to my knowledge, had never produced a single tax return, only requests for loans. The music lowered. The DJ tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention for the gift presentation." This was my cue. It was a tradition in our family, tacky, I always thought, but Owen insisted on it to announce major gifts publicly. I made my way to the front, my legs feeling like lead. The room quieted. 100 pairs of eyes fixed on me. I took the microphone. My hand trembled, not from nerves, but from the sheer physical exhaustion of standing upright. "Ryan, Tiffany," I rasped, my voice thick. "I know how much you've been eyeing that new SUV for your new life together. I wanted to help you start on the right foot." I pulled the envelope out, opened it, and handed the check to Ryan. He took it with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, scanning the numbers. The room waited. I waited for the hug. I waited for the thank you. Ryan looked at the check, then he looked at Tiffany. Then he looked back at me, his grin twisting into a smirk. He held the check up to the light as if checking for a watermark and then laughed, a sharp, barking sound that echoed in the silent hall. 10 grand. He said into his own microphone. The silence in the room shifted from expectant to uncomfortable. 10 grand, I repeated, confused. "It's for the down payment." Ryan shook his head, chuckling as he draped an arm around Tiffany, who was covering her mouth to hide a giggle. "Caroline, sis, look at this place. Look at Tiffany's ring. Do you really think $10,000 makes a dent in the lifestyle we're building? My face went hot. Ryan, that's a lot of money. It's cute, Tiffany chimed in, her voice high and piercing. It's a cute gesture, Caroline, really, but we were kind of banking on you covering the whole lease for the year. That's closer to, what, babe? 20, Ryan said. He leaned forward, looking down at me from the dais. Tell you what, sis, you're the big shot project manager. You've got the big salary. Why don't you take this back? He flicked the check so it fluttered onto the table in front of him, and write one for 20,000. If you want a seat at the head table, hell, if you want an invite to the wedding at all, you need to step up. We're not doing budget anymore. The room was dead silent. I stood there, fever burning behind my eyes, looking at the check lying on the table like a piece of trash. My own brother was extorting me in front of our entire family. You're serious? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Dead serious, Ryan said, his eyes cold and hard. 20 grand or don't bother showing up. We need people who support our future, not people who offer pocket change. I looked at Owen. My father was sipping his scotch, looking away, refusing to make eye contact. He was letting this happen. The betrayal hit me harder than the virus ever could. It wasn't just the greed, it was the public humiliation. The absolute certainty that I was nothing more than a wallet to them. I reached out, picked up the check, and slowly tore it in half. Okay, I said. The microphone caught the tremor in my voice, but it also caught the steel entering it. I understand perfectly. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. It was a rot that went all the way to the bone. The drive home was a blur of red taillights and stinging tears. I pulled over twice, once because I thought I was going to be sick from the stress, and once because I was shaking so hard I couldn't keep the steering wheel steady. When I finally unlocked the door to my townhouse, the silence was a balm. I didn't turn on the lights. I just dropped my keys on the console table and collapsed onto the sofa, still in my party dress. My phone started buzzing immediately. Buzz, Ryan, buzz, Tiffany, buzz, Owen. I let it vibrate against the coffee table, a relentless, angry insect demanding attention. Finally, I picked it up, squinting against the harsh blue light. Ryan, text, don't be dramatic. You embarrassed yourself tearing that check up. Just wire the 20K by Monday and we'll forget you made a scene. Tiffany, Instagram story, a selfie of her and Ryan holding champagne glasses. Caption, family is about support, not spare change. #know your worth luxury lifestyle. Owen voicemail, Caroline, it's Dad. Look, Ryan S. under a lot of pressure. Weddings are stressful. He didn't mean to snap, but you have to understand you embarrassed him. Just pay the difference, honey. You can afford it. Don't ruin the family dynamic over money. Call me. I threw the phone to the other end of the couch. Don't ruin the family dynamic. That was the mantra of my entire life. Since Mom died 10 years ago, I had been the glue. I was the one who organized the holidays. I was the one who paid for Ryan's bail when he got into a bar fight at 22. I was the one who co-signed his student loans, which I ended up paying off because he forgot to make the payments for a year and tanked my credit score. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, my hands still trembling. I thought about the check. $10,000. I had skipped my own vacation to Italy to save that. I had driven my 7-year-old sedan for another year to save that. I walked down the hallway to my home office. I needed to see it in writing. I needed to remind myself of the reality they were choosing to ignore. I opened the file cabinet, the metal drawer sliding out with a heavy thud. I flipped past my tax returns, past the deed to this townhouse, until I found the blue folder labeled R&T lease agreement. I opened it. There it was, the lease for the penthouse suite at the Skyline Lofts. Ryan loved that apartment. He loved the floor-to-ceiling windows, the concierge, the underground parking for the car he couldn't afford. He told everyone he was renting to own, or that he had gotten a deal through a connection. The connection was me. I had bought that apartment 3 years ago as an investment property. When Ryan had come to me, begging for a place to stay because he had been evicted from his last place, I had let him move in. Just pay the HOA fees and the utilities, I had told him. I'll cover the mortgage. Consider it a way to help you get on your feet. For 3 years, I had paid the mortgage. I had paid the property taxes. I had paid the insurance. Ryan paid the $600 HOA fee, and even that was usually late. I looked at the date on the lease agreement. It was a standard month-to-month agreement we had signed to protect me legally, just in case. But there was a standard clause I put in all my property contracts. Clause 14, termination of tenancy. The landlord reserves the right to terminate this month-to-month agreement with 30 days written notice for any reason or immediately upon violation of property terms. I sat back in my chair, the fever heat in my body suddenly replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. They thought the $20,000 was the leverage. They thought my desire to be a good sister was the chain they could yank. But they had forgotten one crucial thing, I whispered to the empty room. They were so busy counting the money in my pocket, they forgot they were living in my house. The next morning, the fever had broken. I woke up feeling weak, emptied out, but mentally sharper than I had been in years. I made a pot of strong coffee and sat on my patio, watching the sunrise. To understand why last night happened, you have to understand Ryan. Ryan was born when I was 5. He was a colicky baby, a difficult toddler, and a charmingly manipulative teenager. He had a smile that could melt glaciers, and he learned early on that he could use it to get out of anything. Mom and Dad adored him. He was the prince. I was the staff. When I was in college, studying until my eyes burned to maintain my scholarship, Ryan was totaling Dad's car. Dad bought him another one. When I was working 2 jobs to save for my first down payment, Ryan was backpacking through Europe on Mom's credit card. I didn't hate him. I loved him. I wanted him to succeed. I thought that if I just supported him enough, if I gave him enough of a safety net, he would eventually build his own foundation. Then came Tiffany. She appeared 6 months ago, a whirlwind of designer logos and vocal fry. She worked as a brand ambassador, which mostly seemed to involve taking photos of her lattes. She fed Ryan's worst impulses. She convinced him that he deserved the best simply for existing. They were a perfect match. He pretended to be rich, and she pretended to believe him so she could spend the money he didn't have. My phone buzzed again. It was Sunday morning. Ryan, still waiting on that transfer. Don't make me tell Mom's side of the family you're being cheap. The audacity was breathtaking. He was threatening to smear my reputation to our extended relatives. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found Cooper legal. Cooper wasn't just my lawyer, he was my oldest friend. We had survived architecture school together before he pivoted to real estate law. He knew where all the bodies were buried because he had helped me dig the graves, metaphorically speaking. He knew about the loans I'd covered. He knew about the apartment. I hit call. Caroline. His voice was groggy. It's 8:00 a.m. on a Sunday. You better be dying or arrested. Neither, I said, taking a sip of coffee. But I need you to draft an eviction notice. There was a pause, the rustling of sheets. For who? The tenant in the downtown unit. No, I said, for Unit 4B at the Skyline. Cooper went silent. He knew who lived in 4B Caroline. Are you sure? That's nuclear. That's Ryan. He told me last night that if I didn't give him $20,000, I wasn't family, I said, my voice steady. He humiliated me in front of everyone, Cooper. He and Tiffany treated me like an ATM. I warned you about her, Cooper muttered. I told you she was a shark. She's not a shark, I corrected. Sharks are apex predators, she's a parasite, and so is he. Okay, Cooper said, his tone shifting to professional alertness. If we do this, we do it by the book. No emotions, strict legal adherence. If he's a tenant, he has rights. But since it's a month-to-month and wait, did he ever pay the deposit we stipulated? No, I said, I waived it. Right, okay. Has he paid the rent? He doesn't pay rent, he pays the HOA, directly to the management company. Caroline, Cooper sighed. Technically, if he's not paying rent, he might be considered a guest at sufferance depending on how we argue it, but let's treat him as a tenant to be safe. We give him 30 days. No cause needed. 30 days, I agreed. But Cooper, I need you to look into something else for me. What? Ryan's business. The one he claims is funding this wedding. He's been bragging about cash flow. If he has income, I want to know about it. Because if I'm evicting him, I want to make sure I'm not missing any assets he could use to fight me. I can do a background asset check, Cooper said, but Caroline, be prepared. If you pull this thread, the whole sweater is going to unravel. Owen is going to lose his mind. Owen made his choice last night when he watched his son extort me and took another sip of scotch, I said. I hung up the phone. The doorbell rang. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. It was Tiffany. She was standing on my porch wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a Starbucks cup. She didn't look angry, she looked smug. I opened the door. Tiffany. Hey, Care Bear, she said, using a nickname she knew I hated. She breezed past me into the living room without being invited. Ryan sent me over. We figured we could have a little girl talk and sort this money thing out without the boys getting heated. She turned to face me, pulling her sunglasses down. Her eyes scanned my modest living room with a look of veiled disdain. Look, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We know you have the money. We saw the renovation you did on the Miller project. You got a huge bonus. Ryan is he's proud. He wants to give me the wedding of the century. You can understand that, right? Wanting to be a part of something beautiful. She reached out and touched my arm. Her nails were long, manicured talons. Just write the check, Caroline, and maybe we can talk about getting you a makeover for the wedding. You looked so tired last night. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who had never heard the word no in her entire life. She had no idea that the woman standing in front of her wasn't the tired sister anymore. She was standing in front of her landlord, and the lease was up. I'll think about it, I said to Tiffany, my voice dangerously calm. She beamed, mistaking my restraint for submission. Great, just transfer it by noon tomorrow so we can book the venue deposit. Oh, and Ryan says if you can do 25, we'll put you at the head table. She winked, turned on her designer heel, and left, leaving a lingering scent of expensive vanilla perfume in my hallway. The moment the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked straight to my home office and booted up my laptop. The girl talk had solidified everything. They weren't just entitled, they were delusional. They genuinely believed I was an endless resource they could tap whenever their fantasies required funding. I called Cooper back. Change of plans, I said. Don't just draft the eviction. I want a full asset search on Ryan. Everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, business filings. I need to know exactly how much of this luxury lifestyle is real. Cooper sighed, the sound of typing filling the line. Caroline, I can't access his personal bank accounts without a court order, but I can check public records, liens, and business filings. Give me an hour. While Cooper dug, I started my own investigation. I logged into the property management portal for the Skyline Lofts. I had given Ryan login credentials so he could pay the HOA fees directly, a small responsibility I thought would build character. I navigated to the payment history. Missed payment, March. Missed payment, April. Late fee assessed, May. Current balance due, $2,450. My blood ran cold. He hadn't paid the HOA fees in 3 months. The management company had been sending notices to the email address on file, his email address. He had been deleting them, ignoring them, letting the debt pile up while he posted photos of sushi dinners and bottle service. If the HOA fees weren't paid, the association could put a lien on my property. He was risking my investment, my credit, my future, all while demanding $20,000 for a party. An hour later, Cooper called back. His voice was grim. Caroline, he said, you sitting down? I am. Ryan doesn't have a business, Cooper said bluntly. He has an LLC registered to your parents' address, but it's dissolved. State records show it was administratively dissolved 6 months ago for failure to file an annual report. So where is the money coming from? I asked, a sick feeling settling in my stomach. Credit cards, Cooper said. I found 3 judgments against him in small claims court from credit card companies, totaling about 15 grand. And, Caroline, there's a lien on his car. The one he owns, it's being repossessed. The order was filed 2 weeks ago. I closed my eyes. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just greed, it was desperation. He was drowning, and instead of asking for a life raft, he was demanding I build him a yacht. Okay, I said, opening my eyes. Draft the eviction notice. Immediate service. Cite the unpaid HOA fees as a breach of the lease agreement. That gives us cause for a faster timeline than a standard 30-day notice. You sure? Cooper asked. This is the nuclear option. He nuked the bridge last night, I said. I'm just clearing the rubble. I didn't send the notice by mail. I hired a process server. I wanted it done legally, impeccably, so there was zero wiggle room for him to claim he didn't get it. Monday at noon, the deadline for their extortion demand came and went. At 12:15 p.m., my phone exploded. Ryan text, "Where is the money? Tiffany is freaking out. Don't do this, Caroline." Ryan call declined. Tiffany text, "Are you serious? You're going to ruin our day over this. You're so selfish." I ignored them all. I sat in my office watching the clock. The process server, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda, had texted me she was in the lobby of the Skyline Lofts. At 1:00 p.m., Brenda texted, served personally to Ryan. He seemed surprised. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Owen. "Caroline," he roared, his voice shaking with rage. "What the hell is this? Ryan just called me in tears. You're evicting him from his own home." "It's not his home, Dad," I said calmly, putting the phone on speaker so I could keep working. "It's my investment property, and he hasn't paid the HOA fees in 3 months. He's putting a lien on my asset." "He's your brother." Owen shouted, "You can't treat family like a tenant. He's getting married. Where are they supposed to go?" "Maybe they can stay with you," I suggested, knowing full well Owen and his new wife, a woman named Sheila who tolerated Ryan at best, didn't have the room. "Or maybe they can use the $20,000 they demanded from me to rent a place they can actually afford." "You are being vindictive," Owen spat. "This is about the toast, isn't it? You're punishing him for a joke." "It wasn't a joke, Dad. It was extortion. And I'm not punishing him, I'm protecting myself. He has 3 judgments against him, his business is dissolved, and his car is about to be repossessed. He is drowning in debt and dragging me down with him." There was silence on the other end. "What?" Owen whispered, "Repossessed." "Ask him, Dad. Ask him about the letters from the bank he's hiding. Ask him about the dissolved LLC. I don't believe you," Owen stammered, his denial kicking in. "Ryan is doing well. He showed me the projections." "He showed you a PowerPoint, Dad. I'm looking at court records." "Fix this, Caroline," Owen said, his voice dropping to a desperate growl. "Withdraw the eviction, pay the fees. We will talk about the money later, but do not make your brother homeless a month before his wedding." "I can't do that," I said. "The breach of contract is filed. He has 3 days to pay the $2,450 in back HOA fees or vacate. That's the law." "You're cold," Owen said. "You're just like your mother when she got sick. Bitter." He hung up. The insult stung, but it didn't break me. My mother wasn't bitter. She was exhausted from carrying everyone else's burdens. I was done carrying Ryan. 2 days later, on Wednesday evening, I was summoned. Not invited. Summoned. Family meeting, Dad's house. 7 p.m. Attendance mandatory. It was a group text from Owen. Ryan and Tiffany were included. I considered not going. I had the legal high ground. I had the moral high ground. But I knew if I didn't go, the narrative would be spun so tightly around my neck I'd choke. They would paint me as the villain who evicted a struggling young couple out of spite. I needed to face them. I arrived at 7:00 sharp. Cooper had advised against it, but I brought a folder. Inside were the HOA statements, the court records of Ryan's debts, and the copy of the lease. When I walked into the living room, it felt like a tribunal. Owen sat in his recliner, looking old and tired. Ryan and Tiffany were on the love seat, holding hands. Tiffany had clearly been crying or had applied makeup to look like she had. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she sniffled dramatically as I entered. "Sit down," Owen said, gesturing to a hard wooden chair opposite them. I sat. I placed the folder on the coffee table. "We are here to resolve this conflict," Owen began, his voice shaky. "Ryan tells me there has been a misunderstanding about the apartment." "There's no misunderstanding," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "She kicked us out. She sent a stranger to our door with papers, Dad, like we're criminals." "You haven't paid the fees, Ryan," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "For 3 months, you put my property at risk." "I was going to pay it." Ryan shot back. "I had a liquidity issue. My funds are tied up in crypto right now. You know how volatile the market is." "Your funds aren't in crypto," I said calmly. "They don't exist. Your LLC is dissolved." "That's a lie," Tiffany shrieked. "Ryan is a genius. He's building an empire. You're just jealous because you're alone and bitter and nobody wants to marry you." "Tiffany, stop," Owen said, rubbing his temples. "Caroline, is it true? Did you really check his background?" "I did," I said. I opened the folder and slid the papers toward Owen. "Here are the judgments. Here is the repossession order for the Range Rover. Here are the unpaid HOA notices sent to Ryan's email." Owen looked at the papers. He picked up the one about the repossession. His hand started to shake. "Ryan," Owen said, looking at his son, "is this true? Is the car?" Ryan's face went pale. The bluster, the arrogance, it all drained away in a second. "Dad, listen, it's a temporary cash flow problem. The car, I missed 2 payments. It's not a big deal. I can fix it." "And the judgments?" Owen asked, his voice rising. $15,000 in credit card debt. "Business expenses," Ryan pleaded. "Dad, you know you have to spend money to make money." "He doesn't have a business, Dad," I cut in. "He has debt." "And he wanted $20,000 from me, not for a wedding, but to pay off these judgments so he wouldn't get his wages garnished, if he even had wages." Ryan stood up, his fists clenched. "You bitch! You went digging into my life, you had no right." "I have every right," I said, standing up to meet him. "You live in my house. You demanded my money. You made your financial problems my problem the moment you tried to extort me." "I am not extorting you," Ryan screamed. "I am your brother, you're supposed to help me." "Helping you is what I did when I gave you an apartment for free," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "Helping you is what I did when I offered you $10,000. What you wanted wasn't help. You wanted a bailout for a lifestyle you can't afford, and you wanted to humiliate me while you took it." Tiffany stood up too, grabbing Ryan's arm. "Babe, let's go, we don't need this. My dad will pay for the wedding, we don't need her charity." "Your dad?" I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Tiffany, does your dad know Ryan is unemployed and about to lose his car? Does he know they're being evicted?" Tiffany froze. She looked at Ryan. "Ryan, you told me the apartment was yours. You said your parents bought it for you." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan looked at the floor. "He lied to you, Tiffany," I said softly. "Just like he lied to me, just like he lied to Dad." Tiffany pulled her hand away from Ryan's arm as if he were radioactive. "You said." "You owned it," she whispered. "It's complicated, Tiff," Ryan stammered, reaching for her. "It's a trust thing. Caroline is just the trustee." "I am the owner," I said clearly. "My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. And as of yesterday, the eviction process has started. You have until Saturday to vacate." Owen put his head in his hands. "Enough," he groaned. "Enough." "No, it's not enough," I said, gathering my things. "Because I'm not done. Ryan, you have until Saturday. If you aren't out, the sheriff will remove you. And Dad, if you want to bail him out again, go ahead. But do not ask me for a cent. I am done funding this charade." I walked out of the house. The cool evening air hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. I felt lighter. The truth was out. The bomb had detonated. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to pick up the pieces. Friday arrived with a suffocating heaviness. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for that evening at a posh waterfront restaurant, a venue Ryan had insisted on despite the mounting evidence that he couldn't afford appetizers, let alone a 3-course meal for 50 people. I hadn't spoken to anyone since the confrontation at Dad's. My phone had been blissfully silent, blocked numbers piling up in my voicemail like unread junk mail. But I knew I had to go, not to celebrate, but to finish what I started. I arrived late, deliberately. The sun was setting over the marina, casting long shadows across the white tablecloths and crystal glasses. The guests, Tiffany's family, a few of Ryan's business associates, and our extended relatives were mingling on the patio, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I walked in, wearing a sharp black dress that felt like armor. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. "There she is," I heard Aunt Linda mutter. "The one who cut him off." I ignored them. I walked straight to the bar and ordered a sparkling water with lime. "Caroline." It was Tiffany's father, a stern-looking man named Marcus who owned a chain of car dealerships. He approached me with a tight smile. "Good to see you," he said, his eyes scanning the room as if looking for an exit. "We heard rumors about the apartment." "It's not a rumor, Marcus," I said calmly. "It's a legal proceeding." He frowned. "Is it true Ryan doesn't own it?" "He's a tenant," I clarified. "A non-paying one, and as of tomorrow morning, an evicted one." Marcus's face hardened. He looked over at Ryan, who was laughing too loudly near the buffet, a drink in each hand. Tiffany stood beside him, looking pale and distracted. "And the car?" Marcus asked quietly. "He told me he bought it outright. Cash." "It's being repossessed," I said. "Tomorrow." Marcus nodded slowly. "I see." He didn't say anything else. He just walked away, his shoulders stiff. The dinner began, speeches were made, toasts were raised, but the tension in the room was palpable. Ryan avoided looking at me. Tiffany stared at her plate. Owen sat at the head table, looking like he had aged 10 years in 3 days. Then it was time for the groom's speech. Ryan stood up, swaying slightly. He grabbed the microphone, his smile brittle. "Thank you all for coming," he slurred. "It means the world to Tiff and me. We're building something amazing here, a dynasty." He laughed, but nobody joined in. "And to my family," he continued, his gaze finally landing on me. "Even the ones who don't believe in me, the ones who think money is more important than blood." The room went silent. "Yeah, you, Caroline," he spat, pointing a finger at me. "You think you're so high and mighty with your little job and your little apartment. But guess what? I don't need you. I don't need your charity. I have Tiff. I have her family. We're going to be huge." He turned to Marcus. "Right, Marcus? We're going to crush it next year with the dealership expansion." Marcus stood up slowly. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. His voice carried across the silent patio. "Ryan," Marcus said, his tone icy, "there will be no expansion." Ryan blinked. "What? But we talked." "We talked about a partnership based on assets," Marcus said. "Assets you claim to have, a penthouse, a portfolio, a paid-off vehicle." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I spoke to your sister," Marcus continued, "and I made a few calls of my own. Your portfolio is non-existent, your car is under a repossession order, and your home, well, we all know about that." Tiffany gasped. Ryan looked like he had been slapped. "Marcus, wait," Ryan stammered. "It's a misunderstanding. Caroline is just jealous. She's trying to sabotage me." "She provided documentation," Marcus said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "Public records, Ryan, liens, judgments. You lied to my daughter. You lied to me." He turned to Tiffany. "Get your things, Tiffany. We're leaving." "Dad," Tiffany whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Now," Marcus barked, "the wedding is off." The silence shattered, guests gasped. Tiffany burst into tears and ran from the table. Ryan stood frozen, the microphone dangling from his hand, his mouth open in shock. "You can't do this." Ryan screamed after them. "We have deposits, we have guests. Send the bills to your business." Marcus shot back over his shoulder as he ushered a sobbing Tiffany out of the restaurant. Ryan stood alone on the makeshift stage, stripped bare in front of everyone he had tried so hard to impress. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pure hatred. "Are you happy?" He screamed, "Are you happy now?" I stood up, picked up my purse, and looked him in the eye. "No, Ryan," I said softly. "I'm not happy, I'm just finished." I walked out of the restaurant, leaving him standing in the wreckage of his own lies. The fallout was swift and brutal. The wedding was canceled the next morning. Tiffany blocked Ryan on everything and moved back in with her parents. Her social media went dark for a week, then reappeared with a single post, a picture of a suitcase and the caption resetting. Ryan tried to stay in the apartment. He changed the locks. He barricaded himself inside. But I had expected that. On Monday morning, the sheriff arrived with the writ of possession. I was there, along with a locksmith and a moving crew I had hired to pack his things. Ryan opened the door looking disheveled, unshaven, and defeated. The apartment smelled of stale pizza and despair. "You really did it," he muttered, stepping aside as the deputies entered. "You did this," I corrected him. "You made the ultimatum. You set the terms." He watched in silence as the movers packed his luxury life into cardboard boxes. His expensive suits, his gaming console, his collection of high-end sneakers, all of it looked pathetic now, just stuff bought with money he didn't have. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Dad said you could stay in his guest room for a month," I said. "After that, you're on your own." He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. "I'm sorry, Caroline." It was the apology I had waited a decade to hear. But it was too little, too late. It was the apology of a man who had lost everything, not a brother who regretted hurting his sister. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't pay the rent, Ryan." I handed him a check. It was for $500. "What's this?" he asked, staring at it. "First month storage unit fee and a bus ticket," I said. "Consider it my final gift." He took it without a word and walked out the door, a single duffel bag over his shoulder. In the months that followed, life settled into a new, quieter rhythm. I renovated the apartment. I tore out the dark carpets Ryan had loved and installed light oak floors. I painted the walls a soft, calming sage green. I replaced the bachelor pad furniture with pieces that reflected my taste, modern, elegant, understated. I decided not to sell it. Instead, I moved in. Every morning, I drank my coffee on the balcony, looking out at the city skyline. The view was breathtaking, and the best part, it was mine, all mine. Ryan got a job. A real job, working entry-level sales at a logistics company. He was living in a small studio apartment on the outskirts of town, driving a used Honda Civic. We talked occasionally, brief, polite text messages on birthdays and holidays. The warmth was gone, perhaps forever, but the toxicity was gone too. Owen struggled with the new dynamic at first, trying to guilt me into helping Ryan again, but I held firm. "He needs to learn to stand on his own, Dad," I told him, "and so do you." Eventually, he stopped asking. One evening, 6 months after the failed wedding, I was hosting a small dinner party for my friends. Cooper was there, raising a glass of wine. "To the architect," he toasted, grinning, "who finally designed a life she loves." "To the architect," everyone echoed. I looked around the room, filled with people who genuinely cared about me, people who didn't see me as a bank account or a doormat. I felt a profound sense of peace. I had lost a brother in a way, but I had found myself. And that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. The $20,000. It was still in my savings account, growing interest. I was planning a trip to Japan in the spring. Just me, no baggage, no drama, just peace.